Hello, and once again, welcome to Autistic Radio, sponsored by coldpack.co.uk. If you're a practitioner in a chiropractic clinic, an osteopathic clinic, or a physio clinic, and you need a cryotherapy cold pack that has your details printed on it to advertise your practice, then when you use the website coldpack.co.uk, we benefit here at Autistic Association to bring you Autistic Radio. Now, Harry, have we got a poem to start today's broadcast?
Thanks, Jules. Hello, everyone. This is Harry's Facebook for Sunday, the 26th of April 2026. And yes, we start once again with a poem. And the poem is called Room with a View by myself. And the poem is called Room with a View by Harry McCormack. And it also shares a picture of what the poem is about. Room with a View. Who needs a window when you have a picture? A view of Ben Lomond, taken on day past. A still view, a perfect view, that no window in my house can challenge. What's people's thoughts?
The photograph is of Ben Lomond in the background with the Scottish Highlands, the Scottish sky, the water. Every part of the photograph for the poem is of the beauty of nature that we associate with our home country of Scotland. So I understand what you're saying there, Harry, that photograph is a way of viewing the outside world, that even though you live in one of the most beautiful parts of Scotland, you can't see that from outside your window. So that photograph in its frame is an alternative window, isn't it, on your world around you?
Yes, it is. It's a poem that I was wanting to do for a while. I don't write poetry much these days. In fact, I haven't written much at all over the years. And I was looking around my room looking for inspiration to write a new poem. Because one that I shared before was actually, 20, 25 years old. And I looked in my room and look at these nice pictures. And the picture of Ben Lomond and the Loch Lomond with it and the whole view was an inspiration to write about. Because ironically, if I had a window that faced the direction of Ben Lomond, I may have that view itself, maybe obscured a little, but I may have it. But my windows don't point that way. And even though I still live quite away from it, not that far. I live in 12 miles, 15 miles maybe. But every window I have doesn't have that great a view because I live within a housing estate. Nice housing estate, nothing wrong with it, but it's that sort of stereotypical Scottish beautiful view that people like to talk about, what Scotland likes to boast about, what Scotland is known for. I just like that I have that in my living room to look at if I'm feeling a bit not too good, or I just love looking at that picture. And it's a picture I've got, it's quite new. And it's a celebration of that picture as well, of what the picture represents. and also it's a gift from my dad. And I don't know if this is a bit inaccurate, but I think that picture is a picture he'd taken and he kind of turned it into a canvas sort of thing for me as a gift. But whatever it is, it's a great view, it's a great picture, and I love looking at it. It's a way of relaxing, to calm down if I'm feeling tense or whatever. It's a sort of pick me up.
I love the red glow on the hill. It's strange that the subject we were talking about in the 444 was windows.
Jesus just shared in text. Love the concept. Universal. And Robbie shares in text. Views like that make me feel better.
I think as autistic people, it's possible that we can take that alternative version of a window, a photograph in a frame, and use our minds to enter it. And so it's a device that we can use ourselves to go into the countryside when we're in a middle of a housing scheme, when we're surrounded by concrete, and we can use our mind's eye to enter a more natural world just through that thin piece of paper that has that beauty printed on it. And it's interesting to me that you've chosen a very big, expansive nature, mountain and forest and lake to look upon and to look into. I think there's something autistic about this, that we can access another world through that artwork.
And yet there's that thing, I'm looking at the line here, that a perfect view that no window in my house can challenge. Robbie said at the latter part of the 444 conversation that he looked out his window and saw a daffodil. That's possibly been there every year, but this year he noticed it. And sometimes our windows are like that. They seem really, what's the word I'm looking for? Everyday, um, nondescript, boring even, not a great view. But sometimes when we're in the mood to look, there's some beauty there.
Yes, I agree with that. Um, Even though what I said about the views outside my window aren't great, the sights outside my window can be appealing. Like, I can remember many times when we've been talking on here, and when my curtains are actually open. A lot of the time they're closed, but when they're open, it's a beautiful sunny day, and there's a tree out my back. And when we're talking about there's some deep things we talk about. It's quite, intense. It's like when I look at the tree and its colours and it just kind of swaying in the wind slowly, it kind of helps me to calm down and not get too anxious of what's been discussed or what I'm listening to or saying, even. So it's amazing how views and looking at something can be so deep and be so impactful. And that's what's great about nature, and that's what the likes of I forgot his name, but naturists basically say that if you're in amongst the trees, etc., not just trees, but in amongst nature and its natural colours, especially if it's in bloom, It can be very soothing for the senses. Yes, at Chris Parkham I was talking about, yes.
There's stuff in the text here. I'll try and read back a bit. Teresa was saying she loves the concept universal. Yeah, I think we did this. Views like that make Robbie feel better. Robbie has appreciated the photos of bluebells he's seen on Facebook. I was noting that for me, a photo or an image is also memory. And what Robbie said made me think about resonance, which I've been contemplating a bit recently, how we resonate with the world. And colours and shapes, forms can do that to us without us saying, oh, yeah, bluebells. It's great to name them, but what got us there in the first place was this feeling, a resonance, a vibration. So just digging what Harry put into his poem, yes, invoking that. Teresa said she always loved both windows onto the world, but more so nature and nothing more than rock. Yeah, Teresa's a rock fan in the sense of, the elements and geology.
It feels like there's an obscure link to what we were talking about in the 444, which was one of our members having their landlord arranging to intrude upon their home to replace their windows, and how difficult that was for them because the home itself for them, and as we described, was their place of security and comfort, and having an imposition into the home was so difficult. And that made us reflect, I think, on how we use our home as a safe space, and the intrusion into it is really difficult. So when we're cocooned in our home, if we have alternative windows on the world through maybe photographs on the wall, or maybe art in our everyday lives, in books that we look at, it's a way for us to be in other places, even if we are hiding almost away from the world. We use our imaginations to go into pictures or into words or into stories out into the world.
Yeah, the home is almost like a frame, isn't it? It's a frame we build around ourselves, and our windows have frames, and pictures have frames. And you're looking at Harry's photo, and it's not got a frame. But yet, the shape of it is itself a frame. I used to love finding old frames lying in buckets and holding them up to the sky and taking a wee photo of them.
I agree with what Jules was saying about the home and about obviously what was discussed, with GR, and I can totally understand with that, the 444 about the feeling of intrusion in the home, because things said and things probably known, because I know it happens to me, by the landlord or by even yourself. Something needs to be done, and people need to get into your space to do something. And things like windows, doors, showers, total bathrooms, kitchens, whatever it is, I've had a lot of that over the years, and it's always been difficult. Even though, in fairness, usually to me it's been as accommodating as possible. So I totally get that, and it does relate to the picture because it's like a controlled view, Because a lot of the time in my house, when I'm in, my curtains are usually drawn, shutting out the world. It's that kind of form of feeling safe and shutting the world out, and only seeing the bit of the world I want to see when I'm online, etc., or put the telly on, or whatever. And what I have noticed as well is I've just noticed right now that following this poem and talking about that particular picture, a lot of the pictures in my home are actually pictures of scene. You know, there's a picture of a stony beach, and behind me, a picture of a house somewhere, and in the bedroom, there's these pictures that they're all these scenes, all different kinds. So, and I even thought about that. I just thought they were nice looking pictures, but they're all windows as well. So, yeah, it's interesting how you subconsciously do these things.
It's kind of healing as well, Harry, because it's like Ben Lomond's there protecting you and looking after you. A friend of mine used to say that we see everything, but those things see us as well. You know, because I used to take a lot of photographs, and she said to me that these things you're photographing made you take the photo. You know, so there was we were discussing healing related to that, like how the image can protect you to a certain extent, although folk think these things are inanimate.
It's quite interesting to me that right in the first lines of the poem, you say, "Who needs a window when you have a picture?" The picture is the alternative view out there. And somebody in the text says that a photo or image is also a memory. And I've been walking on the beach at dawn here in New Zealand, and it's a place that I don't have access to back home. I live in a town far away from the sea. And what I found myself doing is taking my mobile phone, which is just an ordinary mobile phone, and I've been photographing and intentionally making memories for me in the future, because I know that I will not see these things again, because the following day everything has changed. The weather has changed, the light has changed, what's around me, the beach has changed, what's on the beach has changed. It's all an instant. So I've been capturing images as memories, as things that I can use in the future when I'm old to go into as windows. I've not seen them as windows before, but now with your poem, I do see them as windows back to my past that I am making now in the present. So I'm making myself photographs as portals. And I think that's autistic. I think I'm almost cataloguing things, collecting things, putting them together, catching images.
Yeah, we like portals. I'm just going to read some of the text there. Teresa agrees with portals. And she also says, and so many others have seen these mountains too. The mountains hold the history of our memories. But I'd noticed what Robbie had put. Robbie had said he doesn't feel as safe in his flat as he did in his parents' home. And that's Robbie reacting to this discussion and this poem with a thought on safety. So, yeah.
For me, it's not just pictures, it's objects like the furniture, they're all part of my memories. They all trigger the memories and the connection to my past. And when I lost my parents, people couldn't see that. They were just objects to them. No, they're not. They're way back into my past, the happier times.
That's exactly what I meant in the 444 about the emotional structure of home.
Yeah, and as autistic people, I think we need to notice what's happened. That the person who was with us during the 444 to explain the distress that they were put under because people were going to come into their home and change their windows and move things around in their room and not put things back normally for them, which would mean that there were going to be coverings of the windows that they now use as protections from the outside world. They had a kind of half curtain, a lacy curtain that acted as a protection over the window from the outside world, so their world was cocooned, and they took up the majority of the time of our conversation. It was intense for them, and normally they come and join us here at the 555, but just that conversation for them, I'm guessing, has worn them out, has been so big for them that they don't have the energy now to join us as they normally would. It just shows how important these things are to us.
When he mentioned the net curtains, it really made me remember my mother. And I think in his context, that memory is prevalent as well. With my mother, she always had net curtains up halfway up the windows, and I inherited these things, obviously, one way or another. And I would put them up on occasion, but it got to a point where it was too much like my mother, this structure. Of course, it was great to have these mementos and things, but eventually I just stopped putting them up because net curtains halfway up the window was not really my thing, and I didn't need it. So that brought up a lot of those memories for me, the mention of the net curtain.
The next post is from Pete Warmby, autistic author. Autistic and ADHD award-winning writer and speaker on autism and autistic lived experience. And he shared a quote which he says, "This is really important." And it says, "The fact that autistic children learn to mask and appear to modify their behaviour based on your demands means that you might think you have taught them to overcome their autistic traits. You haven't. You forced them to comply at a very high cost to their mental health." What's people's thoughts?
I would agree with every word of that.
Yeah, Harry, Teresa's got a bad voice today, so won't be speaking, so she'll be responding in text, just in case you're looking for responses to some of these posts, obviously. I agree with Robbie, yeah, this idea of overcome, so when we get two meanings of for a situation, the positive and negative ways to look at things. A positive glean or sheen on a negative experience. Oops.
Jesus says in text, "Totally. I had a breakdown at age 8 because of this." Yeah, I can totally understand that. It's just going back to, it's the word comply, because I know Robbie uses the word compliance a lot, talking about school and parenting. A lot of parenting would be the same. Authority figures, it's all about complying. It's not about helping, or it doesn't feel like it's helping. It's like it's trying to mold you into something you're not, because apparently, according to society or the authority figures or setup, what you are is wrong. So they're trying to mold you into something you're not to suit a particular structure, which is obviously, when you think about it, is going to affect your mental health. It's going to affect you long term. Of course it does. People keep telling you that you're wrong. Robbie shared in text, same with work done on rent property.
Much the thing
I
in
think
life.
that's a reflection on. Yeah, sorry, Robbie, you'll know the phrase. I can't remember the phrase for it.
Much in life is about being compliant. You get your letters through from housing associations. You're expected to comply with the time scale that they want to work in. All the so-called support I had with mental health was about teaching me to be compliant, working towards the outcomes chosen by them. It didn't matter how it affected my mental health. Same with the so-called um, support from adult and autism team. That was all about me being compliant and working towards what they'd chosen for me.
What is that phrase for considerations or duty of care?
Sorry, Ray, who we speak to there? She's a shared in text accommodations.
Oh, sorry, I was talking there and I was muted. Yeah, accommodations. Yeah, because of the previous conversation about uh, negotiating with authorities. Yeah, it's kind of like an unspoken expectation for us sometimes, and it would make life a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced like both ends of the spectrum. Like, there's times where accommodations have been made for me to make things a little bit easier, like time of the day in terms of appointment, how an appointment is done. Even with universal credit, there's been a few different things that have been done for me to make things a bit easier, because going into the office is quite it's like a half an hour bus journey each way for a 10-minute interview. So they've accommodated, at first it was a phone call, but the government says no, a phone call isn't really good enough now, because it's obviously they must think it's too easy. And when I think about it, a phone call isn't that great, because I've got problems with my phone sometimes, and mobile phone anyway. And there's been times where I pick up the phone and nobody can hear me. then I need to hang up and then reset the phone, and then they can hear me. But if it was somebody like from, the Department of Work and Pensions, it's like, oh, there's panic stations. But what they've done more to accommodate is, and obviously they do it, well, not obviously, but in my experience, what they've done is that they do it with discussion with me, is it's going to be video. And I've actually got that tomorrow morning, and it's easy enough to be, it's easily to set up because it's like an online account I've already got. So it's like a 10-minute thing that I don't need to worry about as much as I used to. So there's accommodations there. But there's other things where you've got to comply with a certain sort of structure. And if you don't, they look upon you as you're a problem. And I think when Robbie talks about, other people have talked about, that's what you're coming up against. People that just, they see you as a problem rather than as a human being that if you do any accommodation to any human being, it works better with them. It's just a bit of a mouthful there, but you get my point.
It's almost like getting to the point where it's not accommodation anymore, isn't it? Just better behaviour, if we can use that word.
I want all the keyboard warriors to get ready now, because I'm going to say something and I'm going to expect you to email me and give me hell. Why the fuck do so many autistic advocates expect so many accommodations in this world? Because the world is all about people rubbing up against each other and accommodating each other. And it seems to me that very often as autistic people, we are asking for ridiculous levels of accommodation, and that harms us as a group. Asking for too much as individuals or as organizations stops us receiving the reasonable accommodations. And so often I see online people describing their demands as reasonable accommodations. And I think very often we forget the word reasonable, because it is up to us to fit into society in some ways. It is up to us to accommodate the rest of the population. And I think we often forget that, and it harms us all when we do that.
Thanks, Jules, for adding the word reasonable. That's the full phrase I was looking for, not just accommodations. And that's also why I applied the word negotiate as well, because life is a negotiation.
She's as added for our age and late diagnosis. I totally get what Jules has said there. It's about being reasonable. It's being reasonable. There's some people that have went so far the other way, being demanding of special treatment for whatever reason. There's many people who feel that they've been totally wronged in their lives because they're autistic. They've been bullied, they've been pushed around, they feel that their life has been unjust for all manner of reasons. And many of them are out for revenge. And they're saying, I'm not going to take this anymore. I demand this, 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 and this. And I feel that approach doesn't help. I have nothing against people who fight back. But what I do have a problem with is people who just keep fighting without being negotiable, without having any reason or rhyme, just lashing out all the time. And even if someone tries to help, they say, no, this is not good enough, I demand. And you get that with a lot of autistic advocates and organisations who feel that that approach is the right approach, but it can be a very damaging one. So I totally get that point. There has to be a line drawn.
Yeah, I want to soften what I say as well, because I also realise it's a trauma response. We are on red alert very often because we have been pushed around, bullied, and we say no, and we stand up and we say no, 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 without listening sometimes. And I think it is up to us to see that and recognise that in ourselves and make ourselves slightly more reasonable. I know that organisations in general are not reasonable, and there is a fight to have. I'm just expressing that sometimes that last little bit of fight is the unhelpfulness that stops organisations and individuals from coming closer to us and being reasonable. It's us getting in the way of ourselves, and it's specific individuals out there in autism land that say they're advocating for us, but they're not. They're expressing their own trauma, and they're also encouraging us to carry that burden as well. In the text, Teresa has wise words to say because she relates it to our age and our late diagnosis. She says that we tend to have lived without any accommodations. So she says, so understand that a few reasonable things would make a world of difference. Excuse me, I'm going to cough. I'm wondering if in what reason Teresa is saying, I can't speak for her. She is saying that perhaps people who have come to the understanding of their autism late in life and have been masking and bending and accommodating other people have found techniques and ways through life without reasonable accommodations, and now we should be encouraged to request reasonable accommodations rather than continue to just muddle through and take it upon ourselves. So she's putting the alternative view there to say, actually, some of us have a need now, and we're only asking for reasonable accommodations, and that would help us. So it kind of goes back to the post that if we have been taught to mask and inwardly control things in an unhelpful way, then that has a rebound reaction that we see in these autistic advocates. But also, we also have to unravel this masking ourselves and work out and maybe request accommodations. So I'm saying two things here. I'm saying people say, yes, we should ask for accommodations, reasonable ones, but also that there is a theme out there that is asking for unreasonable accommodations that will stop us getting the reasonable ones.
In the text, Teresa's put, we might help bridge a conversation between the advocates and the system, not volunteering. And Robbie's put, he was protected from society by his father for 50 years.
I would be interesting to see what you wrote in the text, Ray, being out there and discussed. Those two sentences that you put in the text.
Well, they were sort of aimed at yourself as a sideline, Jules, you know, that I thought that you may have picked up on the masking compliance difference in this post. You know, autistic children learn to mask and appear to modify their behaviour and demands against forcing them to comply at very high cost to their mental health. Because we've often discussed here that masking is a kind of general condition in the human, is it not? I wouldn't say I've made up my mind on any of these things yet, but we have discussed it. But then I added finally, but yes, this is children. If children, very young children, are learning to do this, I think that's a different thing from an adult choosing to do it, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I can't help but agree with, is it Mr. Warmby? If we look at children and we see processes in society that are out there to enforce compliance on children and force them into a framing of their world that requires them to deny what's natural to them, mask up, that has these the roots of people's trauma, the roots that they express as adults, and yes, you can't get away from that. Formative years and children. But I do agree with you that masking to some degree is a human trait when we are fitting within the society we have, and there's always a balance between us expressing ourselves and fitting in. And it might be that autistic people have the capability of not fitting in if they are given the opportunity, and that's a freedom for them. That's an ability to be outside the crowd, and not masking. You know, we might have the opportunity to unmask and be ourselves in ways that people who live normal lives and normal ways don't. They might be masking their way through the whole of their lives in a way that we are refusing to do. You know, we are wanting to stand out as individuals. That's what autism partly is about. It's individuality. I read more and more the stuff about old age and people retiring and realizing that they have performed a version of themselves, masked their whole lives. They're not autistic people. They're just regular folk who are realizing that too late in their lives that they haven't been individual enough and haven't stood outside the crowd.
Just a basic reflection on what you just said there. Masking is sometimes used to help people connect to others. And I think the case where it's seen as negative is when it isn't connecting you. There's a lack of connection even in masking. It's a protective mechanism. But I think people who are generally seen as normative, or the general population who are masking all through their lives, are doing it because they want to connect with the society. And Yeah, so that's just my reflection on that. There's also some text there I'll just add in before we move on, if we're moving on. Where was it now? When Robbie was saying he's protected by his father for 50 years, he also added he doesn't think that asking to be contacted, I don't think asking to contact by phone is unreasonable. I think in Robbie's experience he doesn't use a phone, so asking to be contacted in some other way is not an unreasonable demand from him for accommodation, perhaps. Teresa adds, there's trauma here. And I was reflecting that, fitting in is almost like a form of behavioural therapy in society. If you want to get by, you've got to do this. So, and Teresa also added, it's so terribly damaging to psychic development. I put that it's almost the law. And then Teresa adds existential. I don't know about her latter statement there. Doesn't make sense to me. I wonder if she'll rewrite it. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. Oh, she corrected it. She meant to children that it is psychically damaging, I believe.
Yeah, for the edit, can we go back on this and can I try and praise this? I think Teresa is saying that masking, or the teaching of masking, is so terribly damaging to the psychological development of children.
The next post is from the Actually Autistic Coach. A personal coach, I empower my fellow autistic people by working to uncover and unmask, revealing our best selves. And they share the following. Some autistic folk don't feel safe in chaotic spaces. Others don't feel safe in overly structured ones. Both are real. Accessibility isn't about everything works for everyone. It's about accepting that it won't. Conflicting needs are real. What's people's thoughts?
I'm going to be very autistic here and say that for me, overly structured spaces are chaotic spaces.
Yeah, I can sort of understand that. The thing about structure and how I believe how I work well with structure is a lot of the structure that I work with now is actually structured by myself. But there were times where, structure in the past, although helpful, wasn't always helpful, like school, etc. But I also felt that structure in many ways was a safety net because it sort of guided you in some way. You didn't feel too lost. Because I do recall that there were some things that were a wee bit different that I felt lost in. But if I do my own structure, it's not so bad. But certainly I'm not a big thing of chaos. The thing that I find difficult with, and it actually frustrates me in a way, because I would love to be adventurous, but it's just I've done it, and I've actually enjoyed doing it. Some of the time is actually doing something without preparing too much for it. Because you feel, well, I certainly felt more free. Like there was one time, one summer, probably 20 years ago now. I was walking around the local town bored, and at the spur of the moment, I just decided to go for a long walk. And I just went this route to where I knew there was this long country road, although it's structured in a way, because I knew where the road went to, so it isn't totally, chaotic. But what I liked about it was spur of the moment, and thankfully a very nice day, and the great feeling I had of doing that. I just recall the buzz of not just while I was doing it, but long afterwards going, I did that, and there was no problem with it. And it's something I would like to recapture.
I'll read some of the texts that are coming in thick and fast. Jules doesn't understand this post, so we'll give him a bit of time to form a kind of response there. I was doing my thing about chaos. Like, I believe there's nothing wrong with chaos. Folks are overly negative about it. I mean, to me, being on the motorway is chaotic in inverted commas, in the normative sense of chaos, as troublesome. Motorways are chaotic because they are so structured. So if I'm in something that is really structured, it becomes chaotic for me in that bad sense. I'd rather not use the word chaotic. I'd say distressing or overwhelming. Teresa then says, it's helpful to think about the spaces that work for her. Libraries and nature. Deep nature and big libraries. That's just her. And that's what is just so great about you. For me, real chaos is freedom, True chaos is like an openness. Robbie doesn't need rigid routine. He just needs to know what he's doing and what is expected. I would ask him, expected from whom? Yourself or others? But I'll finish these texts here. Teresa then adds, anything to do with structure is structure or routine that I put in place to make my inner world safe. Right. Okay, get that. Robbie then says, he particularly hates an imposed routine and structure. Teresa likes chaotic music and poetry. So that came in thick and fast, alternating between Robbie and Teresa, different thoughts on the subject. Might not be sequential like people like, a bit of order. It was frankly chaotic, but lovely.
For me to not be comfortable, I just need to know what I'm doing. But I don't like situations where I'm very much controlled and treated like. That's what I hate.
You really emphasised the word hate there, Robbie. Teresa puts in the text that I'd be a good radio host for a call-in show. Well, long-time listener, first-time caller.
I like the motorway concept, thinking about it. Because a motorway is supposed to be structured. It's a road that's structured, and it's supposed to be a structure to improve a road system. But any time I've ever been on a motorway, and I don't drive, thankfully, I don't think I'd be able to be honest, because of my anxiety. That's another discussion. It's even when someone else is driving, it always feels chaotic. People are, it seems like every car is intense and chaotic and not structured. It's like everybody's getting each other's way, but it's supposed to be all structured so that people can get to where they're going. So the motorway sort of concept about how routines and structure can be, or how structure can be chaotic, it really does, it does connect with me.
I like to know what I'm doing, but I don't like things too rigid. Too rigid becomes boring, and that doesn't go well with the ADHD side of me. I like enough so I'm not going to be in an unsafe place, but not too rigid so that it's got some excitement, some enjoyment.
Teresa's expressing her love of radio. She says, I love radio, but certain stations like CBC, BBC, and public radio, Ray describes that as deep radio, and I think it's like voice radio, NPR, and that kind of thing. And maybe radio, voice at a distance, autistic radio, podcasts, is a way for autistic people to engage with concepts in a safe way that we don't necessarily get from the overstimulation of short form video posts on the internet. It might be that old fashioned radio is an autistic space.
It's like a safe space as well. It's that thing, I often imagine I'm in my head, but I'm in a general head with everybody else's head. And if you do that in society and everyday life, people are so demanding of, say, eye contact or, the physical presence, of visibility, being exposed. I find in the audio or the auditory space, it's very like the thing Robbie was talking about there, about the safe spaces he expects to go to that are structured to a certain extent but not ordered, if you see what I mean. And what happens in there is, like what we do here, we can kind of share the space. We're all here, but we don't have to refer to each other and say, hey, I'm here, Did that make any sense at all?
Yes, and she's added in the text that she doesn't engage in social media, understandably so. And we don't have to piss around the room like an alpha.
I take it we're concluding here for today?
Well, thanks everyone. That was a great discussion as always. It was good discussions on very intense and very good and positive and negative and very good discussion as always. Well, this is Harry's Facebook for Sunday the 26th of April 2026, which is part of Spectrum Voices Conversation, which is every Sunday 5:55 to 7 p.m. UK time. Look forward to next time, and I'll see you soon.